Hey guys, it is Sunday, April 28th. Bitcoin's at 63,500. And this episode is, we're not at all like the 40s. So what do I mean by that? Well, Lyn Alden, who's an economist I follow, has made this argument that the 2020s are like the 1940s. And I just, I've been thinking about this, and I just think this argument's just not correct. I think everything about this argument is misleading. So where were we in the 40s? Well, we had a very young nation demographically. There was a lot of young GIs that were going to the war, and then they came back from the war. We had a very culturally homogenous United States. Everybody was predominantly white, very united in terms of their ethnic background, their cultural values. We didn't have a ton of really rich people. It was much more of a middle class. And America was sort of united in fighting this war, and after the war, coming back and rebuilding the peace. So it was a very different world. We were on the gold standard, right? So the U.S. dollar was backed by gold. And when the war was over, and during the war, there was a lot of savings bonds that were used to finance the war. There was a sense of patriotic duty to invest in these savings bonds to fund the war. And America was the manufacturing center of the world, right? We manufactured way more than anybody else did in the entire world. And most of the world was destroyed after World War II, so we rebuilt it. Now, we couldn't be in a more different position right now. We're obviously off the gold standard. We've been printing money now for decades. We have this endemic budget deficit that's not due to just a one-time war thing, but that's just due to continuous overspending, lax financial controls, just terrible budgeting. We've outsourced our manufacturing to China. We have a very global economic system that is failing because of, for a lot of reasons, but supply chains, bad relationships with China, bad relationships with Russia. So there's just a ton of things different between now and the 1940s. The only thing really in common is that we have a lot of government spending. And we have sort of almost this wartime government spending by Joe Biden now, and by Trump before him, even though there's no war. There's not even a Cold War. And military spending is low. But, we're trying to desperately stimulate the economy. So I think these two scenarios are very different. Now, I don't think we're like the 70s either. Again, our country is a lot older than the 70s. Our debt to GDP is a lot higher than it was in the 70s. So these historical references are just they're not great things. They make for good sound bites, but they just don't mean much. We're not like the 40s. We're not like the 70s. So what are we like? Well, I think, Felix Zulauf, the Swiss sort of gold bug, who was recently on at the Malden conference. I subscribe generally to his view. I think we've had this massive push of spending post-COVID, and we're spending as if we were in war. We're not at war. And things are going to get more expensive to produce. The world economy is going to work less well in the next decade than it worked in the last decade. Things are going to get a lot more expensive. And governments are going to print more and more money to solve this problem, quote unquote. Now, what Zulauf says, which I totally agree with, is that people don't realize that gold has actually appreciated 87% over the last 20, or sorry, fiat has lost 87% of its value. Dollars has lost 87% of its value versus gold in 2002. So, which is, I've owned gold for that entire period, so I can absolutely tell you that that's correct. We've gone from $250 in gold to $270 to to where it is today, right? So we've almost gone up 10x in those 12 years. So, what that means really is the S&P, the growth in the appreciation of the S&P, it's almost all due to fiat debasement. It's not like our economy's doing great and we've got this, no, not at all. We've just got a purely monetary stock market here. The stock market's completely a monetary phenomena, has been for the last 20 years, and it's going to continue to accelerate in this direction. And the reality is, this is how the government's paying its bills right now, because if they can inflate in nominal terms, they can also grab taxes in nominal terms when anybody turns over a house, or turns over a stock. And so they're making between 30 and 50% of sort of long-term of all the activity that's in the system. So it's an unstable situation. It's likely to crash at some point in the next decade. Is it a death spiral? You can call it a death spiral. I think we're in the final stages, but I do expect something dramatic to occur in the next decade. And Zulauf doesn't understand Bitcoin, really. He's a gold bug. As I said, he's too old and he's too Swiss to get Bitcoin. I'm getting up there in age, but I'm not Swiss, and I'm more of a techie. So I think I get Bitcoin. But anyways, that's my rant for Sunday.